Well, hey everybody, and welcome back to Bottomless Coffee with Jerome. Today we're speaking with Minnesota State Legislator Bianca Virnig. Now, she just completed her first session in the Minnesota House, and now she's here to tell us all about it. Welcome. I'm excited to spill some tea with you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
It's my pleasure. Now, okay, you were here before.
Mhm.
And you were here as the Rosemount Egan Apple Valley School Board member.
Yes. Yep.
And you'd worked for a Minnesota Service Cooperative. So we were talking public health.
Yep.
We were talking vaccines. We were talking crazy school board stuff.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
But somehow you ended up in the state legislature over the last year. So like, what happened?
Yeah. Well, it was a total unexpected happy accident, I guess.
Yeah.
Ruth Richardson, who represented the area I live in, 52B, resigned in September. And I got a phone call that was like, hey, have you ever thought about running for the House? And I was like, no, I have not. Absolutely not. And they were like, no, you should really think about it. And I was like, no, I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
I work full time and we have a school board race. And I was really in deep because we had 4 seats up this election cycle. And I knew the Moms for Liberty candidates were going to come for those.
Right.
So I was helping, prospective school board members get their campaigns up and running, get organized.
So they were calling you about the House, but you were already calling other people about school board.
Right. So
Okay.
I was already kind of, eyeballs deep into the school board stuff to ensure that we didn't,
Yeah.
that the election went in a positive way.
For the students.
For the
Yes.
students, yes. And they, the person called, and then I got another phone call from somebody else, and they said, okay, let me talk to my husband. So I talked to him, and he was very supportive and said, well, seems like the natural next step for you,
Now, is that really what he said, or
No,
was
that's
it?
what he said.
Okay,
And
my husband is different.
yeah, I thought for sure he would say, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. And he was just like, you're good at it. You seem to like this. It's the next step.
That's so supportive.
It was great.
You got a good one.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I talked to my supervisor at work, and they were supportive. They were like, we'll make it work. It's great. And then I reached out to the teachers union because they had endorsed me.
Oh, okay.
And I would be leaving early. And so I wanted to
Like,
make
will you
sure.
be mad at me?
Right. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you have any concerns? And they were very supportive as well. So, I kind of went, okay, let's talk about it. Let's see what the next steps are. And I had concerns about being a working parent and a legislator. And they said, go talk to Sandra Feist. Okay.
okay.
So I did. And
No, I don't know Sandra Feist.
so she represents kind of like a St. Anthony.
She's
area.
also a rep. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Also a rep, has kids, works, how do you juggle that? What
Yeah.
do you do? And eventually I got to, yes, I'm going to run. And so I filed to run, and the community came out and supported me in such a beautiful way. Senator Jim Carlson, who's my senator, his sister Lynn Carlson, texted and said, hey, if you don't have a treasurer, I would throw my hat in the ring. And I took a double take. I was like, is she volunteering, to help?
Yeah.
And so she's now my campaign manager.
I've heard that she's kind of a powerhouse in this arena.
Very organized and great and amazing and kind, and understands that I have kids and a job. And then I was a Humphrey Policy Fellow last year.
That's right.
And some of the fellows came out and helped and are still helping on the campaign.
Kidding. That's so nice.
Mm-hmm. I have like a really great campaign team. I have a friend who's doing field operations and one who's the treasurer. And, it was just it just snowballed, once we got rolling, we've been going, and there was a primary. So
Sure.
I had a primary with 3 other DFL candidates, and I won the primary. And then there was the general election, which was in December on a Thursday after the school board election.
You're like, please come out.
Yeah, you're like, people were like, when I was door knocking, they were like, didn't I just vote for you? And I'm like, yeah, that was 2 years ago for school board. You need to come vote again. But also, you have to vote for school board, and then the next, week you got to come out and vote again on a Thursday. So trying, like, to me, the real race was getting people to vote on a, total non-traditional voting day.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's just been great. And we looked at this race as not two separate races, but the primary, the general, and this election as a single unit. So yeah.
What do you mean by this election?
So I have to run this November.
Oh,
so
stop it.
Yeah, so I'm on the ballot again. So I'm in campaign mode, basically. But we saw it as a whole, the whole thing as one, not two separate.
I mean, that seems like the way to do it, since it's all just kind of running together anyhow.
Yes.
So session just ended.
Yep.
In Minnesota, we go till May.
Yep.
What was your first day like as a legislator?
So I came in mid-session, right?
Yeah.
And I was the only one. It was, like I said, a special election. The swearing in was awesome because I could invite, as many friends as I wanted.
Oh,
so
nice.
There were quite a few people there. That was great. And
I was there.
yes, thanks for coming. And so, you show up on the first day, and I, I'm new to politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't grow up in this culture. I don't have deep roots in it, but I have deep roots in public service and giving back. So I show up and I'm like, what do you do? Like, they're like, here's your office. And you're like, okay. And here's your LA. And I meet Sam O'Neill, is my LA, and he's fantastic.
Legislative assistant?
Yep, my legislative assistant. Yeah, he's amazing. And Sam was really good about, helping me hit the ground running. I think it was good because I, in my day job, knew policy and legislation, right?
Yeah.
And I was assigned the Human Service Finance, Education Finance, and Elections committees.
Okay.
And right away, the chairs reached out and said, do you want to take this bill, or what are you interested in? People were really supportive.
Yeah.
Cheryl Yuakim was my mentor. If I get reelected, when you get reelected,
okay.
I will go through the orientation that everybody else that was
nice.
New got. I got a very short, abridged, all right, this is what it is, okay? Here you go, good luck, and away you go. And, you start writing bills and you're meeting lobbyists, and I had bills that I knew I wanted to do that were part of the work that I do in my day job.
Yeah.
For example, a bill that allows the LPN in schools to administer an EpiPen without having to call the school nurse. Because, the school nurse is waiting for the LPN to call in an emergency to say, oh, yeah, sure, you can give the EpiPen.
You are well steeped in the acronyms.
Yes.
What's LPN?
Licensed practical nurse.
Okay.
LSN, licensed school nurse.
Thank you.
Yep.
I knew the N stood for nurse, but I wasn't sure what the other ones were.
No, that's all right. That's okay.
Now, we don't have enough nurses in schools.
No,
is that right?
we don't, for sure. There was just an article put out by MDH, about the lack of school nurses.
And it kind of sounds like your bill was going to take some of the workload off of the school nurses?
Not necessarily as much as just allow the trained professional to be able to do their job.
Well, that's
streamline
nice.
the process, right? So when you're a kid in the nurse's office and you have the LPN, because your school doesn't have an LSN, and they need their EpiPen because they're, stung by a bee, you don't want to have to be like, okay, well, I need to call the nurse first to see if you want that administered right away. So let's give the EpiPen. They're trained professionals. Let's trust them to do their job. And so we made that change.
Because otherwise I feel like I'd be training my kid to be like, okay, grab the pen and
So that was an actual story of a student who came, who, needed the EpiPen, and the nurse was like, I don't know if I can give this to you.
Wow.
And they turned to their friend and said, hey, just stick this in my belly. That's not what we should.
Correct.
Right? So let's make it easier. And then, there was another little bill that I did, real technical, around the school nurse. and who can administer life-saving drugs or medication. So it said school personnel, but there wasn't a definition of school personnel. And this just clarifies that it is the school nurse or registered nurse, because some schools contract, they aren't necessarily their employee. So, you know, there were little bills like that I wanted to do, and then there were bigger bills that were brought. And at the end of the day, I think I got, 11 or 12 bills across the finish line.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I hit the ground running, which was great, and I couldn't have done that without, so many people helping me along the way, right?
Well, okay, so from school board to candidate to representative, have you had time to connect with your constituents?
Oh, yeah.
Like at all?
Yeah.
Like when do you actually talk to people?
Well, so the first portion of the legislative session, you're always meeting with constituents. They come down, there's days on the Hill, right? So every little group has their day on the Hill.
Yeah. Did Masmus come to you, by the way?
Yeah.
I told them to.
Yes. Masmus came. So for those that don't know, it's the professional organization that I belong to for school facilities and buildings and grounds safety folks. Yep, they came.
Good.
And I carried a bill that was really important to Masmus. Huh. They talk about the historic investment in education last session, which, there's all sorts of talking points about that, right? We're only filling the pothole a third of the way. There's still so much more to do. But there is a huge disparity in education that is beyond the classroom, that's beyond test scores, and that's the actual physical building. Yeah. So you have alt facility schools, there's 26 of them that can levy for however much they want. And then you have the other 303 schools or so that are capped at $380 per student, right? So you have school districts like, say Lake of the Woods, where if they want to replace their roof, they have to do it over 18 sections, over time. They can't do it all at once because they can't levy for it.
Okay.
And it's, causing a real problem. You have schools like Rosemont, Apple Valley, Egan, who just passed a $500 million bond, and they can levy for, whatever they want. And then in my district, I have 197, West St. Paul, Egan, and they are, capped like at $380. So it's not, the conversation really has been around rural and urban. And it's really like what I call, 26 v 303, right? Like it is an urban problem as well, this disparity. And so they came. And
I kind of feel like, once you start getting leaks, you're going to get mold, and
the
mold doesn't really care. Like it's gonna impact your children. It's gonna impact their learning. It's gonna make everything stink. Yeah. Like let places replace their roofs when they need to replace their roofs.
Like, well, and buildings have changed. There's what we call like critical infrastructure, right? HVAC systems, parking lots, roofs, but also emerging technologies. So you have bills here and there around solar and energy efficiency and telehealth, right?
Oh, sure.
And school health. The telehealth wasn't a part of the conversation even really 10 years ago. So when all of these regulations were written, they were written for a different time. So we need to modernize some of that. And that's one of the things, not just in education that's important to me, but all around. How do we modernize the things that we're doing to match with the needs of today?
Well, that's a great ethos. That's funny you say telehealth. I was like, wait a minute, when did I last see my doctor? Because I think since COVID, I had like a tooth infection or something. I couldn't get into my dentist because of COVID. So I was just chatting with my primary, and he was like, put the phone in your mouth.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, okay, if we could just get like a balance between telehealth and actually coming in, that would be very helpful for me. But you can't deny the benefits to telehealth, especially like you mentioned earlier, when there aren't as many nurses available for students, and they need to talk to somebody about what's going on.
Well, and if you think about like why students, absenteeism, right, is a huge concern these days, and why aren't students showing up to school? There's dental, there's mental health, and there's illness, right? We have a whole new virus on the scene. You have RSV, COVID, strep, flu, you know, kids are going to be out more. But the telehealth, you have, especially around mental health, students who were leaving school to go to their car, you know, or their parents were picking them up to go to the doctor, and then probably not coming back.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
So if you have
2 trips
right
to school.
Yeah. So if you have, you know, a good telehealth space, they can go see their doctor and then go back to class, and they aren't missing as much.
I think I heard a story on NPR that was kind of similar to this, talking about how students were not going to school, and for some families, if their child is sick, over the last few years, we were basically taught, okay, if you have a sick person in your family, do not expose them to other people. And so even if it's just a cold, even if it's just allergies, they're like, oh, my kid's coughing, they're staying home. Whereas in some districts, I guess you can drive up and like the nurse will see you in the parking lot and let you know whether or not your student should be in school or not. I was like, oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. We really need to change how we look at healthcare, the delivery of healthcare and education, both of those things. And they are intrinsically tied together. You know, I think this is one of the challenges that I experienced in the legislature is, well, that's a health, that needs to go to health. Well, that's education. And there's a lot of this. And you're like, no, these are, the Venn diagram is here, right? Education, health, healthcare. And where they overlap is the school nurse, is the mental health, is the facilities, the health of the facilities, right?
Yeah.
And you can't, we have to stop doing this and we have to start working together. And that is a great way of addressing the health needs. Like, does the student need to stay home? Or, you know, no, they'll be fine, they can come to school. The sooner you can get treatment, the sooner you can come back to school, right? So for a lot of students, the school nurse is the only healthcare provider that they have access to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we need to address that. There are superintendents and administrators and leaders who think schools are not deliverers of healthcare, or we're in the education business, we're not in the healthcare business. But education has been in that business forever, right? They have been in the food service business, the transportation business, the healthcare business. They're in that business. And the sooner you can embrace that and the sooner you can address the needs of the whole student, the sooner we can address absenteeism, literacy rates. You know, it's a whole student for a reason. And yeah.
Oh my gosh, your constituents are so lucky to have you. Let's take a quick break, but I am definitely interested in hearing more from Representative Bianca Virnig.
Thank you.
Be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Bottomless Coffee with Jerome. We're here having a really great conversation with Representative Bianca Virnig. And I think we're going to get a little wonky now. You mentioned your committee assignments earlier. Can you just remind us what those were?
Sure.
And then I'm like, what was it like? You know?
Sure. Yeah. So I was on the Ed Finance, Human Service Finance, and the Elections Committee.
Okay, lots of money stuff.
Yep, really, really great committees to be on.
Oh, really? Okay.
And the chairs were awesome. You know, I worked for Hennepin County for quite a few years, so the human service was a very natural fit for me. You know, people had asked, well, what did you want? And I was like, well, transportation, because we have transportation needs in the South Metro.
Yeah.
Or labor and industry, because I used to work for the Department of Labor and Industry. I have the OSHA background.
Oh.
The building codes, you know, but I got these 3 and they couldn't have been a better fit for me. One of the bills that Chair Freiberg of Elections came to me and said, oh, would you like to do a bill on the first day of session, you know, our first committee meeting? And it's like, sure, what do I do? You know, and Sam, my LA, had to walk me through that. And I had Susan Brower, the state demographer, was, you know, the testifier in support of the bill.
She's excellent.
Yeah, she's great. And then I had a bill that has been kind of 10 years in the works with MSBA around school board elections. And they were a perfect person to carry it, right?
Okay.
So what it did was it allowed school boards to appoint when a vacancy occurs with less than half of the term left for that person to serve the full term.
The board itself appoints
the board could appoint already, but the person could only serve 1 year, and then they needed a special election.
Okay.
So this gives them the opportunity to serve 2 years, and then they're on the election cycle. And so it saves school districts quite a bit of money.
Ooh.
So Stillwater School District had 2 special elections that ran them like $138,000.
Okay.
And that comes out of the general fund, right? So that's money out of the classroom. You know, and it aligns with cities and counties. So it was a good bill to do, and that passed. And they had been trying to do that for 10 years, and we got it across the finish line. And then, you know, I was Chair Freiberg was really great in including me in a lot of different conversations and explaining how the process worked. Yeah. And Chair Knorr of Human Service and Finance heard my bills. And like I said, Cheryl Joachim, the chair of Ed Finance, was really supportive. I was able to help in some of the attendance. There was an attendance bill, absentee bill. I was able to provide some support in that. And then I have been asked to serve on the...
Is this some kind of conference? Something?
Yeah, yep, I'll mention that. So I was...
You're busy.
I am.
You did all this in like 5 months.
The interim work is, there's the session, and then the interim work is just as robust. I'll be serving on the student absentee and truancy, the student attendance and truancy legislative study group. So that'll be interesting. But you know, you hear a bill in committee, and then it goes into an omnibus bill, and then you hear the omnibus bill in the committee, and then you hear the omnibus bill on the floor, and then you know, it passes, and then you have to come to common language, right, between the Senate and the House, and so that is a conference committee. And Chair Freiberg asked me if I wanted to be on the elections conference committee, and I was like, yeah. Sure. What does that mean? You know, and he was like, it's good. You have some bills that are in here. Let's, you know, I think it'll be a good opportunity for you. And of course, you know, people texted me and were like, you know, I've been here 5 years before I was on a conference committee.
Oh, wow.
How'd you get on a conference committee in your first, you know, like you've been here 2 minutes, you know?
Right.
So that's when you bring the House and the Senate together and you decide, you know, whose language are we going to use? You know, you do the walkthrough. And my Senator, Carlson, is the chair of the Elections Committee. So it was kind of fun to serve on a committee with him. And then you get to your final language, and it goes back to the House, and you vote on it, and then it goes to the Senate, and they vote on it, and then it becomes law when the governor signs it.
Oh my gosh!
So, you know, there's a whole process. It's not just hearing it in committee, but it gets heard. Things get heard a lot along the way. Yeah, and that was a new experience for me. It was great.
Well, you explained it very well for someone who was like literally just going through it for the first time and like figuring it out. That's good for you.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, so you said you helped. You had bills.
Yep.
You had bills. Did you actually do the writing on these bills, or were they kind of presented to you, somewhat done already? Like, what did that look like?
So okay. Both. Like the
MSBA one you mentioned was 10 years in the making. So.
Yep. So that was brought by the lobbyist. I mean, I knew about that bill before because of...
MSBA is School Board Association.
Yes.
You were on the school board, so that makes sense.
The 2 nurse bills that I mentioned, I wrote with colleagues in my day job. Like we did that, you know...
Like starting from a blank page.
Yep. They had some of the language, and... you know, they shared it, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and then you have the House, you have resources, right? So you have House research, and they put it in they do the actual writing. I mean, they're the brilliance behind it, right? Like I'm not the therefore, where to, you know, all of that. They do all of that. You kind of say, this is what I'm thinking. And, you know, they came to me, the nurse bill is a great example, and they said, we could address this here, Or we could, you know, in the Nurse Practice Act, or there's this weird section over here in schools. And I was like, the weird section.
Okay.
We definitely want the weird section. And then at the end, I wrote a bill that provided grants to school districts. My bill was 3 specific schools to make their playgrounds accessible and inclusive. So they were $100,000 grants. And when it went to the conference committee, it got amended and a 4th school was added because they had funds for that. You know, so I wrote that, you know, the language, I sent it to House. Yeah. They, you know, kind of fleshed it out, sent it back. You know, there's this back and forth of, yes, that's what I wanted to say specifically, or, you know, thanks, I didn't think about that. And, you know, those made it through. And then they're the ones that you get from the lobbyists, right? Or some of them were given to me by the chairs saying, hey, you know, this is an agency bill. It's a technical bill. It's correcting an issue from last time. Would you like to take it?
Yeah.
And you read through and go, yeah, I can do that. I can take this bill. So it was a mix of.
So wonderful, fantastic. And it's, I think the reason I was asking you about that question had to do with something I asked you earlier, which is about constituents and whether or not you had time to meet with them. Yep. And because frequently when I'm talking with my husband, he's like, oh, we should just do this. Yeah. Well, I'm like, well, all right, well, email your congressperson or your representative. And like the process of my husband's scatterbrained emails becoming legislation, you know, I found fascinating.
Yeah.
But we should circle back. Have you had a chance to meet with your constituents, and have they given you any ideas?
Yes. So
scatterbrained or otherwise.
Right. Well, obviously there was during the primary, we door knocked a lot. You know, the general, of course, when people come to visit me, I get emails. I have a very active constituency.
Oh, really? Okay.
I believe Sam has responded to well over 1,000 emails. You know, he's great. Yeah, they are very active Senate district, and then we started door knocking. You know, so that's kicked up again, and of course, you know, you meet people all over, right? And they always want, oh, you should do this or think about that, and sometimes there are things that, yep. I know what my expertise is or where I can be most effective. And sometimes it's, you know what, I can bring this forward, but I'm telling you this person is a better person to carry that work. And connecting them with the right person or, you know, trying, you know, what can I do as your rep? And then there's something called casework. So constituents write about all sorts of things. And, you know, you're like, this isn't a legislative action, but we need to connect you with, like, you know, the IRS, right? Okay. You know, and so they you know, Sam helps triage that and get people to the right place. And sometimes it's the city council, right? Or it's our mayor, or, you know, it's another state agency that can address it. So we do field that as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's great.
I was thinking about some of the ideas that I had or that I received back in 2020 when I was running, and one of them had to do with alcohol deliveries.
Okay.
and if you ever get the suggestion, please call it Linda's Law, because I promised my Aunt Linda in law.
Linda, all right. Linda, bring it. Let's see.
She said, why can I only get like 1 case of wine delivered a year under my name? Like, what business is it of the state or whomever how much wine I'm getting delivered?
Oh, that's interesting.
Look into it.
I can. Look into it. Yeah. Send me an email.
I will.
Because I won't remember when I leave.
And it needs to go to someone else. That's going to just be part of the casework, and that's just fine.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about it, right? So somebody said, hey, you should pass a law that requires you to have your lights on. We own a trucking company, and cars are getting smaller, and they're harder to see. But if people were required to have their lights on when they're driving, we wouldn't have as...
Just like all the time?
Yep, all the time.
Oh, okay.
We wouldn't have as many accidents or near misses, you know, because cars are smaller, and it is hard for us. So I looked into it, and then I got this, you know, response that was like, well, we tried to pass it here, we tried to pass it there. Oh. These were the issues at the time. Here's what, Norway has done, and I got a full, like a very nice comprehensive, that's a great idea. Here are the considerations.
Neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to Linda's Law.
Okay.
In my mind, there was a lot of unfinished business at the end of this session.
Sure.
And so I can see how maybe alcohol delivery wouldn't be a priority. But I'm interested in your opinion on the end of this session in particular.
Well, so the end of session was interesting. I feel like Speaker Hortman did a really good job of preparing us along the way. And people say, well, what'd you think? And I'm like, well, it wasn't as bad as school board.
Oh, really?
And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, they're going to go home to the range and to Perham and to Mankato or, wherever. I'm not going to run into these people at Cub, And so, and there's a lot of theater involved in that. And, you walk away and people are the temperature goes down. But, school board was very different, right? They rush at you and, they're your neighbors. And it was that was very different. But, like I said, Speaker Hortman kept us really prepared for this is sort of the path that I think we're taking. And, it's not the one we wanted, but this is where we're at. And yes, I don't know that a legislature's business will ever be done.
Yeah.
Of course, there was the ERA and, the bonding bill that didn't get done. There were a lot of things that kind of got sacrificed at the end. And, people say, well, how could you support a bill that big that you haven't even read? And I go back to what I had explained earlier. Well, you hear it in committee, it goes to an omnibus, you get a conference, so you've heard the bits and pieces of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a pretty good idea of what's going to be in that final bill. And then there's the interim work, right? And the stuff that, are your passion projects or, just the things that you want to resurrect that there wasn't time for. And my interim list is like, it is so long.
Oh, gosh.
And, for example, Rep. Edelson, who's now the Hennepin County Commissioner, had approached me and said, would you be interested in taking on a couple of the things that I've been working on, right? Because there's the work that she's been doing that's years in the making, right? Not all bills are written and heard and passed right away, right? They can be years in the works. And so I'll be supporting the READ Act and then priority admissions or the 48-hour rule. We have this backlog of people not being able to get into the right treatment facility. And so that's something that I'm going to take on as well. And then, of course, the school roofs, right? I'm going to bring that back in maybe a little different fashion. School health, bring that back. I wasn't there for the budget year, right? So everybody was like, oh, we got all this money. And I was like, I didn't get any. So, all right. And I said that, how can we address healthcare and education more effectively? So there's, in every session, there are things that happen that you need to amend or correct. So, for example, last session, not the session I served, but before that, they got rid of TEFRA fees, which is basically a tax on people with disabilities. But they forgot people living in congregate settings. So I took the bill that would eliminate those fees for people living in congregate settings. It was really to amend work that was done.
Yeah.
So I think that will come up in the interim as well. There's a lot of work to do, which I'm very excited about. And, people bring up ideas like Linda's Law.
Like Linda's Law.
Okay, we'll look into that and see, right? How can we make things more efficient, easier?
I'm really appreciating part of what you said. It kind of sounds like the state rep as the steward of good ideas. It's like just because one rep's leaving doesn't mean the ideas go away. We've got to make sure that our constituents, even if it was 10 years ago, that their great idea gets carried over the finish line for everyone's benefit.
Yep.
That's really nice.
Yeah. It's you know, you have your constituents in your district, and then you think about like who can I serve? How does this serve the state, right?
Yeah.
You know, how can we all work together so Minnesota really is the best place to live, raise a family, age, stay, play, you know, all of that.
Oh my gosh, look at you teaching us here on Bottomless Coffee today. Thank you so much. You're sticking around at least one more segment.
Okay.
We will be right back with more from Representative Bianca Virnig. You are back watching Bottomless Coffee with Jerome. We're here with Representative Bianca Virnig, who has really been like educating us as to how the sausage gets made at the Minnesota Legislature. It's been really wonderful. It's just been like a delight picking your brain.
Thanks.
This question is maybe a bit more personal and less wonky. But what is it like as someone who loves her family, as much as I know you do, having to spend so much time, I guess, at the Capitol? Like, what is it like being a legislator with a family like yours?
Yeah, that is one of the. So somebody asked me once, like, if you could, you know, wave a magic wand and do anything, what would you do? And I said I would have more time. Right?
Oh, sure.
Because you need more time. And everybody said, oh, the last 2 weeks, you know, are really rough. And the speaker told us, expect to be here day and night, you know. So I told my family, hey, you know, don't expect to see me these last 2 weeks. Think about it like mom has 2 jobs. You know, there's a lot of families where the parent goes to work all day, comes home, and then goes to work all night. And, you know, let's think about it like that. And so if I got home early, they were really happy. I think they were really proud that this is my job, and they know how much I love it. My daughter is one of my best door knockers. We love door knocking together. And, you know, they've been really supportive, but it does have drawbacks, right? I can't not work my day job because financially we need my income. But also, you know, one day I came home and there was a little Post-it note on the door, and it said, "Dear Mom, if you're reading this, it's probably really, really late, and I've gone to bed, and something, you know, bad happened at school, and I really wanted to talk to you, but you're not here, so I'll talk to you tomorrow, hopefully. Love,
oh my gosh.
You know, my daughter." And like, that just makes your heart break, right?
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there going, all right, I had to listen to these people talk about hamburgers all night while my kid was having, you know, a hard day at school.
Yeah.
And, you know, you try to make up for that when you can, and really capitalize on that family time when you can.
Yeah.
But they're the demands of, you know, not just the legislative session, but the campaigning, right? And I can't be everywhere all the time for everyone all at once. Mm-hmm. And you have to prioritize, you know, so sometimes I miss out on, you know, door knocks or events on the campaign side because I have a family, you know, and I have 3 young kids, and, you know, one is a teenager, right? And, you know, that kind of stuff that you still have to do. But I think that's what grounds me in the reality of, you know, being a parent, working, living in my community, and understanding what the challenges are.
Right.
So it has been interesting, and it has not come without its challenges, and it has also been immensely rewarding. And I wouldn't trade it, and I don't think my family would trade it.
You know, I feel like that expression, "thank you for your service," can be very like trite sounding, but this is an excellent reminder that you actually give things up in order to be of service to your community. And so does your family.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. No.
From the Bottomless Coffee community.
Yeah, no, thank you. And
service.
you don't do this alone, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't get here alone. Every person serving has family and friends and a community that is there supporting them, whether it's hosting garden parties or door knocking or texting or just calling to say, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Or friends who showed up at the Capitol with pastries and said, you might be hungry, you know? You know, your family going, hey, we turned on TV and we watched you, you know. the text messages saying, good night, I love you, you're a super mom, you know, those types of things. You don't get here alone. Every person there has a community and has a support network. And, you know, I'm giving just as much as they're giving. But I just served 1 year. Yeah. You know, I think of my colleagues who've been in it many years, who've missed many band concerts and many baseball games, or I guess baseball wouldn't be in session, but sporting events, right?
Yeah.
Missed those things. Yeah, right. Yeah. Hockey tournaments. But it is immensely rewarding, especially when you can come home and say, hey, we made this law, you know, and it's going to help kids, or it's going to help families, or it made a difference. So it's great. I love it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And you know, I was on the Egan High School kids had me on their TV show, and they asked the question, you know, like, what advice would you have for us? And yeah, my advice would be, don't wait. Don't wait till you're 40 to get involved. Like I said, I'm not deep in the politics. I grew up in a right-wing conservative household. You know, I wasn't involved until I had kids, till I had, you know, what I thought of as more of a stake in it. And we all have a stake in it. We all need to be involved. Don't wait. Don't wait till you're 40. Don't wait till you've run for office and now you're like, what is a convention? What do I do there? Yeah. You know, like I had caucus before, but had never been to a convention. Get involved now. See whose values you align with. And that's only going to be more important as we come into this next election cycle. And we need everybody, boots on the ground. We cannot take any vote for granted. And that's the advice that I have for people is get involved. There are ways, whether it's donating money or your time or even just a kind word. You get a lot of angry emails, but it's those ones that are, thank you so much, this made a difference. So that's the advice I give people is don't wait, get involved.
I would like to do your campaign manager, Lynn Carlson, a favor and ask you, candidate Virnig, how can people get involved in your campaign?
Yeah, well, they can email bianca4house@gmail.com. You know, there's a lot of ways you can get involved. Yeah. From door knocking, you know, we need door knockers. Even $5 donation is, I have people that donate $5. I have people that donate more. You know, that helps, right? Donations help. Yeah.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, I do have a website, biancavirnig.com. Okay. Yep, you can go there. You know, for example, my sister lives in Virginia. Okay. So she can't help, right? Oh, she can't door knock, but she loves talking to people on the phone. And so she will call constituents, you know, get out the vote. Hey, go. And she's on a different time zone, so she can call at a different time. Sure. You know, there are all sorts of ways. And whether it's my campaign or your local rep or just a rep that you connect with in some way, or they carry work that's of interest to you, get involved. Get involved. Don't wait. And up and down the ballot, sorry.
Okay, no, please.
There are school board races that are up.
That's true.
There are city councils. There are county commissioners. There are state legislators. We have, you know, like Angie Craig is in my area all the way up and down the ballot. You know, we all have to be there. We all have to be involved. So, yeah, go to biancavirnig.com.
Yeah, what's your name?
Right, biancavirnig.com, or email me at bianca4house@gmail.com. You know, those are two great ways.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been really exciting. Yeah. And thank you for nerding out with us for the last 40 minutes or so. Bianca Virnig, State House in the state of Minnesota.
52B, Egan, Mendota Heights, Mendota.
Jerome Evans, bottomlesscoffeeshow.com. Thank you so much. Stream us online, stream us on YouTube, and watch us on MCN6. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you next time.